You can start.
Okay. Okay. Good day and a warm welcome from us here at Voice of Men 360. This is our 6th annual observance of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys, which was founded by International Men's Day on January the 31st, 2020. A press release to this effect was issued yesterday and can be viewed on our Facebook page. My name is Rob Herholtz, and I am Director of Operations for Voice of Men 360. My co-host today is Dipchand Ramcharitar. He is Director of Outreach and Development for Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a Canadian-based nonprofit organization headquartered in London, Ontario. Founded in 2020, Voice of Men 360 supports the well-being of men and boys through advocacy, education, and mental health support. It aims to break stigma surrounding men's mental health, family, and social issues through a live podcast for sharing personal stories, as well as workshops and events. The organization is deeply involved with International Men's Day and advocates for the elimination of violence against men and boys. Thank you for joining us for today's 90-minute discussion, where we'll examine the role the media play in shaping perceptions of masculinity, particularly how boys and men are portrayed, understood, and often misunderstood. We wish to acknowledge the efforts of Dr. Jerome Tulaksing, founder of International Men's Day, and IDEVAMB, which we are celebrating today, for his support for the broadcast today, as well as the continued support over the years. Before we proceed, I would like to read out 3 items. The first one is our land acknowledgement statement. Voice of Men 360 acknowledges the lands and people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We are thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. The lands we're situated on are covered under the Williams Treaties and the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, a branch of the Greater Anishinaabe Nation, including Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. These lands remain home to a number of Indigenous nations and people. We acknowledge this land out of respect for the Indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also known as North America, from before the arrival of settler peoples until this day. Most importantly, we remember the history of these lands has been tainted by poor treatment and a lack of friendship with the First Nations who call them home. This history is something we are all affected by, as we are all treaty people in Canada. We have all a shared history to reflect on, and each of us is affected by the history in different ways. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, then it does not have to define our future. Second is our disclaimer. Okay. Sivam is putting it on the screen here. Okay, our disclaimer. We would like to remind everyone that Voice of Men 360 is committed to promoting peaceful harmony in all our interactions. The views and opinions shared by our speakers are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Voice of Men 360. We kindly ask our speakers to avoid specific references to political or religious ideologies or organizations and focus on our mission to inspire positive change. Please note that our content is not a substitute for professional or medical or therapeutic advice. If you're struggling with personal challenges, we strongly encourage you to reach out to a qualified expert. For questions or concerns about today's episode or any of our content, feel free to email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. The third point, we are addressing the needs of men and boys should not be misinterpreted as opposition to other advocacy efforts. Our focus is additive, not adversarial, and grounded in the belief that inclusive dialogue strengthens outcomes for everyone. This presentation will be available in Tamil from 8 to 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. We wish to extend a warm welcome to the audience in attendance, as well as the distinguished panelists who have generously agreed to participate. Today's format is straightforward. Each speaker will deliver a 15-minute presentation followed by a Q&A involving questions from the audience. This part is specific to the audience. Please enter your questions into the chat feature, and when the final speaker finishes, we will answer as many questions as time permits. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel, starting with Lawrence DeMarco.
Would you like me to begin, or are you going to make more of an introduction?
No, it's just an introduction over to you, and you have your 15 minutes to shine.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to clarify. Didn't want to talk over you. Let me just set this up here. I'm assuming now that you can see my screen that says the 6th annual observance of International Men's Day. Does it not?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I want to thank you for the invitation to speak today, and thank you for all your hard work in arranging this conference today. I'm going to, my presentation, I'll give a brief introduction about the International Council for Men and Boys, which is a partner organization of DAVIA, the Domestic Abuse Violence International Alliance. We're actually under the same corporate umbrella. I'll talk about how our work is related to media portrayal and its importance, the results, changes, and feedback, the public acknowledgement of some optimism that I'll share, and then what we're going to be doing moving forward and how others can join with us, or how we all can work together. So at the International Council for Men and Boys, we address and identify these 12 areas of male inequality that are on your screen. This is a screenshot of our website where each of those numbers are clickable links. We try to address the full spectrum of disparities that affect men and boys, and these are the 12 items that we focus on. If you go to that page and click on each number, they have supporting data and research and evidence in support of how men have fallen behind, how men and boys have fallen behind women. So every fact we allege and everything is supported by studies. These are the 4 that really apply to what we're talking about today, directly relevant to violence against men. And this is, again, a sub-screenshot of these are 4 of those 12. And I'm just listing the numbers as they appear on our website. False allegations is one, and the fear of false allegations and how men recognize them as weapons can perpetuate a cycle of violence and have men tolerating physical and domestic abuse, even when men are physically stronger. So, according to studies, men are disproportionately affected by false allegations, especially in domestic violence cases. And that's supported by surveys in 8 different countries. Violence against men we consider separate as partner abuse. These statistics are harsh and often overlooked. Men are more likely to be victims of violence, particularly homicide. 78% homicide victims globally are men, and men are almost 9 times more likely than women to be killed in war, including not just soldiers, but mass killings of civilian men is a common component of political, military, and ethnic conflicts. And in addition, work injuries, men face 15 times workplace deaths and nearly double the work injuries as women. Partner abuse, a main focus. Male victims of intimate partner abuse receive far less support than female victims. Despite being equally likely to be victims, there's fewer resources available to men, almost none. And in the era of the Me Too movement, although men are or may have greater physical strength and frames, women and men know the legal world is dramatically favorable to women in this area, and that's a bias that perpetuates male victimization. Media bias. This actually gets me emotional with sadness. This is a real image from a real newspaper in Australia that demonstrates the media bias against men, suggesting, how do we stop this kid from becoming a monster? Meaning, take a cute, innocent 8 or 9 year old, and unless we intercede, what society is trying to tell our men, our boys, who then grow up to be men, that if we don't stop your nature from coming through, you're going to become a monster. So that's one sample. But when I first started working for the International Council, one of my project was to study a book which leads to this statistic. Men often Media often portrays men in a negative light 69% of the time. 69% of media portrayals are unfavorable. So I did a book summary of a detailed study on medial portrayal and its importance. The study was written by J.R. McNamara, and he entitled it "How Mass Media Shapes Male Identity." And he analyzed how media often distorts or marginalizes men, causing psychological and societal harm. So it raises awareness of this biased portrayal of men and boys. And this is critical because the media, in turn, influences public perception, policy, and male self identity. And it underscores the urgent need to correct these harmful narratives and promote balanced representation. So, a little about his methodology. He sampled 650 newspapers, over 100 magazines, and over 330 hours of TV, commercials, and shows in Australia, the United States, UK, and Europe. And he calculated that the reach is over 30 million of this sample or this area. And he gave both the number, the quantitative analysis, and the quality analysis to assess tones and themes. And what he found is that 69% statistic with only 12% were positive. And men were shown as violent, emotionally inexpressive, or irresponsible. Critical roles like fatherhood, mentorship, and male mental health are minimized. We may know this anecdotally, but he gave the statistical support for this perception. You can find the our study or our summary of the study. It's downloadable on menandboys.net/media under that item 12 area of male awareness. And all this matters because these negative portrayals worsen male mental health, reinforce the false stereotypes, and cause harmful public policies and laws, which further leads to bad things like poor education outcomes, suicide, homelessness, and illegal bias. So we at ICMB, what we primarily do, and with Davia, of course, we expose these biased portrayals and resulting harm through our press releases, calling out the media outlets, UN organizations, and government leaders for when they do these unfair portrayals, these biased statements, and unfair policies. So we support part of the solutions that we have on our website. And what we do is we support ethic and educational reform to teach the media to be fair in both sexes. And we remind them if they, any time that we see that, and we call them out. And we advocate for positive media depictions of men as caregivers, thinkers, and leaders. And on social media, we use and we encourage you to also use whenever we make a comment or post hashtag gender equality for men. So I want to move to something more positive now. Late 2024 and in 2025, we must acknowledge that we have seen land breaking positivity. So I do want to focus on that because there is hope. So at the end of 2029, the presidential election revealed that men became a new power voter dynamic because, well, first, before even the exit polling, the media covered a gender divide in candidates that they were supporting without getting into political ideology of course, that we're sensitive to. But the support, and men said that they were supporting leaders who spoke out on men issues. And then following that election, bipartisan voices on both sides of the political fence from Barack Obama to J.D. Vance and President Trump, both sides and leaders and governors and senators began acknowledging that boys and men have been left behind in important policies throughout government. And we saw this even worldwide. Around the world, officials recognized male challenges. In Argentina, they began sanctions for false gender violence allegations. In Australia, lawmakers demand equal policy focus on men's well being. And in the UK and Canada, suicide, education, and fatherhood reforms were endorsed by national leaders. India and Denmark, there was a call for equal protection for abused men. We began again in 2025 compiling statements of international world leaders expressing support for men and boys, and it's pretty sizable and impressive and growing. And we write to leaders, to lawmakers across 60 countries asking for statements. And that's something we continue to do. We compiled who has responded to us and other statements that we see online at menandboys.net/statements. So that's also, well, that's our website, and you can see that. And we've uh, organized it by category or location. So, in this year, academia got into the act of raising awareness of men and victims, not just perpetrators. A handbook, an anthology compiled by Denise Hines, entitled The Rutledge Handbook of Men's Victimization in Intimate Relationship. Over 30 international scholars contributed. And the book noted that intimate partner violence is often bidirectional, not one sided, contrary to the popular narrative that it is one-sided. Male victims are often ignored or disbelieved at notice, and media bias, false allegation, and stigma obstruct justice. Key findings in this handbook: men in every region of the world globally report partner abuse, all kinds, verbal, emotional, and physical. And the barriers for men seeking help include shame, lack of services, and disbelief that men can be abused. Courts and welfare systems fail to protect male victims. Dr. Benjamin Bailey came from Israel to talk at our conference in International Men's Equality Month, and he talked about the invisibility of abused men, legislative abuse, failing to enforce false allegations and penalties for making false allegations, and he noted the systematic cost of ignoring female perpetrated violence. This is a human problem, not a gender problem. And he also discussed findings in a survey that men are more abused verbally and emotionally than women, and sexual and financial abuse is equal, and 42% of couples experience mutual violence. He concluded men can also be victims, not just villains. Attitudes have and need to continue to shift from ridicule to recognition, and bigender equity dialogues expanded across both academic and media. That it has happened, but it needs to happen more. So another positive development, 2025, is national strategies for men's health are beginning to be issued. In Canada, they are preparing a national strategy on men and boys' health, which is to be released in 2026. The UK, late in 2025, introduced its first ever men's health strategy with £3.6 million in suicide prevention package. And the United States in June introduced the Dads Matter Act to promote father inclusive family care. Now, a lot of these health policies will also help men who suffer from domestic abuse. So, the first time, nations are naming male disparities, funding male centered support systems, and engaging in honest dialogue about gender based harm. What still needs to be done, and how the public support these initiatives, and what the ICMB advocates for, is support for all victims, because men are up to 50% victims in relationships. So we advocate for equal access to shelters, counseling, and legal protection, public acknowledgement of female perpetrated violence, and restoring the presumption of innocence in abuse allegations. Also, we want false allegation, negative consequences enforced so we have a deterrent which will uphold justice. We want to restore shared parenting rights after family breakdowns so men don't stay in abusive relationships for fear of losing access to their children. We want professionals trained in trauma informed care for men, and we want to stop shaming uh, male survivors. So, last two things quickly. We have just launched a Celebrating Men podcast in an effort to promote uh, celebrating men. Our first guest was Tom Golden, a therapist who has a handle and channel, Men Are Good, and he discussed how men heal differently. Next week, we are recording David Maywald, and he'll discuss his book, The Relentless War on Masculinity. And we also started a campaign called We Are the Media Now, because too often the media ignores us or ignores men. And we are going to do an end around and go directly to our own media channels by coordinating with over 210 groups and pooling our media outlets and channels, supporting one another to manipulate the YouTube or the online algorithms so that our message gets put to the front. This is an invitation. There's my email address where I can forward you to the person who gathers the data so that we can send a group email to everyone when we have a new book, an event like this, a uh, podcast, a video where we all follow, watch, and support one another. Because if we are not going to get substantial or enough coverage, we can do it ourselves and support one another. So with that, I thank you, and I look forward to the opportunity for question and answer at the appropriate time.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. That was a very impressive presentation. Thank you for delivering that. And your website here that I'm on, I'm checking it out, is chock full of great information. So I'll be definitely using it as a resource now that I'm aware of it. So thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Vincent Sue. Vincent, please introduce yourself, and we look forward to your contribution this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Vincent. Yeah, I'm the founder of Authentic Men Asia, and I have this committee for men in Singapore. Yeah, I'm based in Singapore, and I just had the organized the events on the International Men's Day, and this is my third year running it. Yeah, and this coming year will be a much bigger scales. Yeah, and I already have the space. Yeah, so I'm going to do my presentations for now. Yeah. Okay, today's my topics will be behind the mask, violence, abuse, and the Asian male experience. Yeah, I'm a certified relationship coach, a positive psychology coach, as well as the clinical trauma therapy. Yeah, and this is some of my stories. Yeah, for myself, I witnessed family violence. Yeah, physically abused by my late fathers using a leather belt. Yeah. And I was emotionally neglected by my both parents because of the traumas they had. And in school, I was also physically and verbally abused and bullied by my classmates. And on top of that, my youngest brother passed away at the age of 8 years old. And for me, I struggle in my studies. Yeah. And as an underachiever, yeah, I have ADHD symptoms. These are all my childhood experience. Yeah. And I would like to say that I was hurt and I'm healed and I'm a healer now. As you can see that this is just the report, Straits Times in this year, 4th January, and recent report about men being abused by wife. Yeah. And this is the reports. And if you can see that, yeah, men experiencing abuse face stigma and society's kind of expectations, and they have find it difficult to seek help. Yeah. And when Asia's men are abused at home, yeah, why many suffers in silence? And of course, the real fact is that what the media have been very show that Asian men can be a victims of abuse by wife. These cases are in fact underreported, and abuse is often emotional, psychological, controlling, and of course, a lot of times media show the bad side of what the men have done, but seldom show men as victim. And for men, we are fear of being seen as the culprits. And a lot of men, they fear that not be believed because they've always been classified as the abuser. Yeah. And of course, if you look at it, a lot of assumptions have been made. Yeah. And women are always be the victims. Yeah. And of course, by doing that, this discourage men from speaking up. And for my personal experience, because I work with a lot of men, and especially with couples, and even when men shared with me, when their husband shared with me about how they will be verbally and even physically abused, and normally they don't talk in front of their wife. Yeah. And when I have an individual session with them, they will share how they was being abused. Of course, if you look at it, a lot of cultural expectations on us, as an Asian man, yeah, and we have to endure quietly. And of course, we don't share, our own kind of secrets in public, our own shame, yeah. And of course, we need to keep the family intact at all costs. And seeking help as seems to be losing face and being Asia, yeah, and failing as a husband or a father and bring shame to the family. And there are different forms of abuse reported by men. Emotionally abuse, and it can be constant criticisms. Yeah. And a lot of times when I work with couples, yeah, a lot of husbands have been going through that and criticized by their wife and talked down by their wife. And the other one would be psychological abuse, gaslighting, manipulations, and giving threats. And other than that, there's this control and isolations. Yeah. So for those who have like uh more on the divorced couples, so they have a limiting access to their children. And even for some guys, yeah, I have heard that the wife have been controlling them and where they go, who they see, and even they will check on their handphone regularly. For physical abuse, of course, is more on the hitting, and a lot of times is minimized by the men themselves. And as you can see that there are different types of abuse and not really reported by men. Why men delay seeking help? Of course, there are many reasons. One, of course, is the society or the social stigma and also fear of losing their children. And in fact, a lot of times guys, yeah, as a fathers or husband, they don't really talk about it, not even to their friends, because they find that it's quite a shameful thing. Yeah. And also because of the lack of this male-friendly support space. And there are many women's support group out there. But for men's support group, there's not a lot, and only there's a few. And the other thing, of course, is the lack of public awareness. The last is the internalizing brain. It must be my fault. Yeah. And they are feeling helpless and don't know what to do and where to seek help. And let's look at it. Yeah. Silence is not equal to strength. Endurance is not equal to health. And we want to encourage men to speak up. And by speaking up is showing the responsibility, the courage, and to protect or to be protective for self and for their children. And Asia's men deserve safety, dignity, respect, and support. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vincent, for sharing your lived experience. That was very brave, and much respect for getting through it. Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
next speaker is Dr. Bolu Oluniru. Welcome, Doctor. The floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Dr. Boluwaji Olaniru, and I am a mental health advocate. I have my own website and organization titled Rooted in Care. And Rooted in Care is a social enterprise. And in this social enterprise, what we do is we support mental initiatives dedicated to supporting caregivers of autistic individuals. And we do that through training, education, and empowerment programs that promote resilience and community well-being. Apart from my work at Rooted in Care, I also lecture at a few colleges here in Ontario and in British Columbia. But I'm also a researcher, an educator, and a gender-based violence advocate. And my work really sits at the intersection of gender, health, and community well-being. I'm very passionate about that. Today, on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys, we really gather for a conversation that's often overlooked and sometimes misunderstood, and occasionally uncomfortable, but deeply necessary. As we just heard from Vincent right now, when he was going through his stories, I was like, wow, right? And a lot of the things that he was pointing out, culturally, I resonate with seeing some of those patterns too within my own culture or within the Afro-Caribbean culture as well. So this is definitely something that is not just Asian or South Asian related. I believe it is a something that's is the whole world feels on in some aspects. So we're here today to talk about violence. Yes, very uncomfortable, very triggering, but it is a discussion that we need to talk about. Not only are we here to talk about violence, but we're also going to talk about healing, right? About what it is to be visible, visibility, and about the stories that we tell about men and boys. Because before violence ever happens within the homes, the schools, the communities, society, it often begins with a narrative, right? And within these narratives, we see the beliefs and expectations. And one of the most powerful storytellers shaping those beliefs, unfortunately, is the media. The media we see every single day. It's all around us, whether you're into social media or not, right? And the media is not just entertainment. It's education, socialization, it is cultural messaging, right? The media teaches us what strength looks like, what vulnerability looks like, and then who deserves sympathy, right? Who do we get to feel vulnerable for? Who do we get to feel sorry for when certain things arise within beyond our control, right? And who is expected to also stay silent, right? When you have a male and a female arguing, whose sides do we pick? Who do we feel vulnerable for? Who do we feel punishment should go to? And we see all of this from movies to news headlines to social media feeds. You can't get away from it. It's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, whatever you're into. You'll see some sort of gender-based violence, right? Whether it's on the male side or the female side. But men, a lot of times, absorb messages about masculinity long before they even realize it. So think about the common portrayals of men and boys, right? They're seen to be like tough guys, never crying because that shows weakness or that shows softness, right? They're the aggressor, right? To establish dominance, to establish power, right? And then you have the emotionally distant father, right? A lot of things you go to your mother for, those are lady things. To be a man, you use your hands, use your face, use your body, right? The man who's always fine, You don't talk about your emotions, even if you're going through it at work, within your, romantic life, you're fine, right? You never own up to anything. You're supposed to be that powerhouse. And boys who must man up, right? You're never allowed to feel emotional or soft. You can lose a family member, something traumatic can happen in your life, and you're just supposed to man up, right? You don't say anything. You just keep that stern face on and that kind of hard shield to protect your heart, to protect your emotions. And all these portrayals that we see may seem harmless at first. Oh, yeah, that's how men are. Like, that's what society tells us that they're supposed to behave. But the repeated thousands of times that we see these images portrayed throughout social media, they become scripts. And those scripts become expectations. And those expectations shape our lives. So a lot of times when you're seeing portrayals of men in real life act certain ways, people see, oh, it's expected. Of course the man was going to yell. He's a man. He's not going to be quiet. No one's supposed to talk over him, or people are supposed to respect him, or he commands this type of energy when he enters the room, right? Look at sports. How are men portrayed in sports? The more rugged you are, the more of a tough player you seem to be, right? Or the better player you seem to be. And the more aggressive and the more physical the sport is, it shows the toughness of the men, right? Or the boys that are playing these particular sports. So when boys grow up seeing that real men don't show emotions, right? They internally learn how to hide pain, right? So when men see that male victims, they're really taken seriously in the media, they learn that their suffering may be dismissed. Doesn't matter. They're going to be silenced. Nobody's going to believe them anyways. So a lot of times they internalize the pain. And when vulnerability is mocked, silence becomes safer than honesty, right? The fear of you coming out to share your emotions, share your experiences. What Vincent did was very courageous, right? But a lot of people who have this idea of what it is to be a real man wouldn't have come out to tell their history, tell their woes, tell, the sad aspects of their lives. And we all have them, right? Because they feel people might look at them a different way. Oh, I used to think you were soft. I didn't know you would cry or be emotional or this would bother you. You're supposed to be a man. And silence is where suffering grows, right? You continue to build, you continue to build, you continue to build upon all these kind of emotional stressors because there's no release for them. And we see this reflected in mental health. So men are significantly more likely to die by suicide globally, right? They internalize these feelings, they internalize these emotions, they internalize, all these kind of outside noises, right? Of not saying anything, be a man, don't share things with your friends, don't share things with women. That's what women do. Don't behave like a woman. And before you know, unfortunately, they are harming themselves, right? And many report deep social isolation. They become really depressed states. They don't want to talk to anyone. They want to keep their distance because nobody can understand, because they're not vulnerable enough to speak about the issues that they're having. So they just stick to themselves, right? Again, sometimes perpetuating that stereotype of, oh, that's how men are. They're not like women. They're not bubbly. They're not, all over the place. They're not excited. They like to keep that demeanor of cool, collected, quiet isolation, right? And many delay seeking help until a crisis point. So you have men that don't seek help until, unfortunately, it's too late. And not because they don't feel. We are all human. We all feel. And not because they don't get hurt. I don't think there's one person on this earth who has never been hurt, whether it's by a loved one, a friend, a worker, an employee. It doesn't matter, right? Whether you were younger or older, everyone feels hurt. But because they were taught not to show it, right? Even you can see if you go to the playground and kids fall down and they're crying, if sometimes they have father figures in their lives, you'll say, hey, don't cry, it's okay. Trying to silence them already from feeling physical pain, which any person would react to. Violence against men and boys is not just physical, though. It can be emotional neglect, right? And psychological harm as well. Culturally silencing and the denial of safe spaces to speak, right? Where do they go? Thank God we were listening to the previous speakers that mentioned different type of support system and resources, but because of how unpopular it is to speak about these things, a lot of men may not be opportune to see where these resources are available, right? And again, depending on stigma, cultural silencing, they may not even have the courage to go out and seek for these type of safe spaces to speak about their emotions, to speak about what's bothering them, and to literally have someone that would listen to them, right? And this by no means is a competition, right? So I just want to make that very clear. I'm not here to talk about violence against men and boys that, and that takes away from the very real urgent violence faced by women and girls. No, right? I'm not here to defend one or defend the other. I think when it comes to violence, no one should be putting their hands on anybody, right? Use your words. And if you're unable to use your words, excuse yourself, calm down. When you're back and collected, continue from there. So again, when we talk about gender-based violence, it's not a competition whatsoever. Pain is not a scoreboard, right? It's not a badge of honor, to endure and to sacrifice and to be held captured or captive within, an emotional, destructive, states. There's nothing to be proud about. It doesn't show how tough you are. It doesn't show your strengths, okay? So when we talk about gender-based violence, it affects people across all genders. No, regardless of how you choose to identify, it is something that affects each and every single one of us one way or another. And when we expand our understandings, we strengthen solutions for everyone, right? Why is it happening? Again, uncovering those layers and going back into, why is this happening to me? Why do I feel this way? Where does this aggression stem from? Why do I feel so disconnected from maybe the rest of, society in terms of, well, I feel hurt, I feel pain. So if our goal is safety, dignity, and well-being for all people, then our conversations must be inclusive and honest. So we can't leave certain groups out, right? Everyone has the opportunity to speak, and everyone's story is different. Vincent's story will be different from someone else's story that may be in the same community with him, right? So when we talk about violence, it's not, again, just a physical thing. It can be a mental, can be emotional, it can be financial. There's so many different aspects to it, right? But we must make sure that everyone is included and we're not just excluding certain genders or certain communities from the conversations because they believe it doesn't exist, it's not a problem, or they dismiss it because they don't feel that it's something that is attributed to their community. So recognizing that male victim does not erase female victims, right? It doesn't at all. Because a lot of people might be like, oh, maybe she's sticking up for men or what. I'm human, right? And I stick up for humans, period. So it just acknowledges reality. And reality is where real solutions begin, right? Acknowledging that there's an issue. That's the first step in terms of how do we deal with this issue? What recommendations can come forth, right? So again, reality is where real solutions begin. Now, again, we talked about how media is everywhere. We can't get away from it. Even if you're not on socials, somewhere, somehow, an advert, somebody told you, someone's sending you something, we can't get away from it, right? And media can be very informative, very educative. But how does media cause harm, right? So let's talk about how the media sometimes contributes to harm. So when male victimization is portrayed as comedy, right? We see maybe men being vulnerable or being emotional, and we trivialize it. We trivialize their trauma, we poke fun at it, we make it seem like it's a laughing point, right? When men are always shown as perpetrators, it limits how society sees them. So before Jack Robinson, oh, it's the man. Oh, it's the man. Oh, he must have done it. Oh, it's them. It's him, right? It limits how society can see them. And when fathers are portrayed as incompetent, right? Caregivers to either their loved ones, their children, maybe their aging parents, or even to their spouses, right? It discourages nurturing roles. So if, again, you don't give them a chance, or oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, then how would he ever know? Oh, he can't do it right. Well, then show him, right? We can't just dismiss and be like, oh, they're competent. They don't know. They don't have that nurturing side like mothers do or like women do, right? A lot of people think it's a biological thing, but nurturing can be something that you instill within yourselves or can be instilled within you. When boys only see heroes who are aggressors, right? They learn that dominance equals worth. So a lot of the heroes we look up to within the comic, the Superman, the Batman, Thor, all these kind of hyper masculine men that we see as the aggressors, right? They're getting rid of the bad guys, they're protecting the city, they're showing their dominance, right? So them boys will internalize that as that's what it means to be strong. That's what it means to demand and command respect. Media does not create violence alone, but it shapes the environment where violence becomes normalized, common, expected. And what is normalized is rarely questioned, right? So again, when we look back at culturally, right? Why do men do this? Or why do we, kind of assert gender roles and responsibilities? Well, because that's just how it's supposed to be, right? We normalize it, so we don't question it. So when someone does something that goes against it, it seems abnormal. We question it. Why is he changing his son's diaper? Why is he staying up to help, bottle feed the baby? That's weird. Where's his wife? That's not something he's supposed to be doing. Because again, culturally, we have normalized certain gender attributions to how to take care of a child in the household, who does what chores, even money-wise, who's bringing in what, who's, allowed to stay out late, and all these things become normalized. And because they are, we don't question them. So the power of changing the story is something that we need to do. This narrative that this is what men are supposed to look like, this is what women are supposed to look like. We need to change those stories. Now, here's the hopeful part of everything that we're talking about today. Media has also the power to heal, right? So the same media that kind of trivializes, the men's emotional, response to maybe trauma, is the same media that we can use to show that no, responding to emotional trauma in a healthy way is a strength. It is not a weakness. To be able to advocate for yourself that I need help, I need to be seen, I need to be heard, I need to be healed, it's a very powerful tool. So media also has the power to heal, to reshape, to expand possibilities. Image media where, right? So just imagine, right? Media where boys see men expressing emotions without shame, right? You can just imagine how that narrative starts to change. Or where fathers are shown as capable nurturers, right? Men seek therapy, and that therapy is normalized, right? It's not, oh, I can do it on my own. I don't need that. That's for sissies, or that's for soft guys. I don't need all that, right? We normalize these types of behaviors. We have male survivors who are believed and supported, not made fun of, not questioned, not picked apart. You have when masculinity includes kindness, right? Empathy and care. When representation expands, right? And the permission expands, and the permission to feel, right? To everyone feels, the permission to speak, the permission to be heard, right? These are all the things, or some of the many things, that we want to encourage and advocate for. Seeking for help. It's not a weakness. It's a huge strength for you to recognize you need help, and then to go out, advocate for yourself, and get the help that you need to make you a better person and make you a better member of society. And when even one man feels safe enough to say, I'm struggling, I need help, I'm going through it, I need help, instead of suffering in silence, right? It goes a long way. We're helping not only that man, but that man's generation, his lineage, right? We're breaking down traditional barriers, cultural barriers that said, hey, this is how you're supposed to live. This is what you're allowed to show. This is what you're not allowed to show. We break all those down, right? And we start up a new narrative. So instead of suffering in silence, that alone can change a life, right? And sometimes even save one. So again, when we're talking about today being the day of, International Men's Day in terms of speaking up against violence, it's very important. In my own work, I've sat down with men who've carried decades of pains in silence because, again, culturally, that's what was expected of them, right? Men who believe they're not allowed to cry. Crying shows weakness. Sorry. Crying shows weakness. They're not allowed to need support, even when offered. Oh, no, I'm fine. Oh, no, don't worry about it, right? Not allowed to admit they're hurt, even when it's visible on them. And many told me when I asked, why don't you reach out? Why don't you ask for help? They said, no one's going to listen. I don't think anyone's going to listen. I'm a man who takes us seriously. I don't want to be made fun of, right? So when safe spaces are created, when judgment is removed, something remarkable happens, right? They're able to speak, they feel connected, they're able to heal. They realize that within this community of men that share the same experiences with them, they're not alone, right? And that aspect of not being alone is the first step into getting that healing that they're so looking for. And at that moment, when someone feels that finally I'm being seen, finally I'm being heard, finally I'm not invisible, right? That is the most powerful thing that they can have, because violence thrives in isolation, right? When you're isolated, it's only going to get worse in terms of what you're going through mentally, right? You need someone to share it with. You need someone to listen, even if you don't want to hear anything that they have to say in terms of response, but just someone to listen, to make you feel seen, right? And healing thrives in connection. So to wrap up everything today, our call to reflection. I want us today to kind of invite ourselves to be able to reflect, what stories are we consuming when we open social media, when we're listening and watching these movies, right? What narratives are they being reinforced in terms of how we see men in society, right? And what messages are we passing to the next generation? If we continue to kind of enable these narratives that say men are aggressors, men are emotionally unavailable, emotionally unstable, caregiving wise, they're incompetent, right? What message are we passing on to the next generation? Are we continuing to normalize it? So changing the portrayal of men and boys is not about protecting egos, not at all. It's actually about protecting humanity. So when boys learn that vulnerability is actually a strength, they grow into emotionally resilient men. And when men are allowed to be humans, families, communities, everybody benefits from this. When survivors are acknowledged for what they've gone through and not ridiculed, not trivialized, not made fun of, poked fun of, healing becomes possible. And when we expand the stories that we tell about men and about boys, we all win at the end of the day. So thank you all for being willing to have this conversation, for listening, and thank you for being part of a world where more people feel seen, heard, supported, and felt. Thank you all for listening.
You, Doctor, that was absolutely fantastic. And one line, there were many, but one that stood out for me was pain is not a scoreboard. That's pretty heavy stuff. Thank you. Our fourth speaker is Ryan Beichu. Welcome, Ryan. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you to our co-presenters, Vincent, Dr. Bolu, who is exceptional, as well as Larry. I'm truly honored to be on such a panel to discuss what is a very important topic. This is a topic that we've taken a different angle on this year, and a very important angle. The role of media changing the portrayal of men and boys. Last week in Guyana, a viral video circulated around the internet. It showed a group of teenage boys bullying a student. None could have been older than 16 years old. And now, 4 of those 5 bullies are in custody, bullying this fellow young man. In Trinidad and Tobago, a 12-year-old was peer pressured into drinking disinfectant. That story made the headlines for a couple of days and then wasn't able to sustain its course throughout the rest of the week. Why do I start with this? Much has been made about the repressions of men versus women in this forum and in everyday life. In conferences like these all over the world, we talk about that. I come from a block of nations that is Latin America and the Caribbean. Outside of war-torn regions in the world, Latin America and the Caribbean is the most violent region in the world. The violence that is perpetrated on men and boys is equally as disturbing as the violence we speak of versus women versus men. And that's where I wanted to sort of look at this morning before we go into the usual. We have a problem in this side of the world where violence of men versus men continues to hamper men's progress. And we're not dealing with that in the way that we ought to be dealing with it. And that's why year after year for International Men's Day, we keep talking about the violence being perpetrated against men, why men are silent, what can we do to help men, what programs can we institute to help men to speak up more, all very important. But one of the conversations we ought to really be having is the level of violence men are perpetrating against men. Dr. Bolu made an excellent point about the family. If we are to go to the root causes of the challenges that men are facing, we will find that here in Latin America and particularly the Caribbean where I live, there is a huge challenge of a family breakdown in our society. And that huge family breakdown that I speak of includes a family that excludes a father. The repercussions in our society have been traumatizing, and it has led to unequivocal violence on a scale that we have not seen before, and one in which the World Bank has concluded that outside of war-torn regions, Latin America and the Caribbean are among the most violent region in the world. It's startling where we have found ourselves in this block of nations. It's startling how many families right now are without a father. It's startling how many young ladies are pregnant and cannot find their other partner who got them pregnant. And this isn't about, my presentation isn't based on hitting out at men. My presentation is based on looking at the contributing factors of how we are transitioning boys to the monsters Larry looked at in that front page newspaper to men. And I think now I'd like us to look less on the impact of women and how women are in some cases verbally abusing, demasculating, physically abusing men. And look at how men are mistreating men. How men are killing men and ending up in jail cells across the Caribbean and more so even in Latin America. And so it brings me to this year's theme, because everything I have just spoken about, particularly the violence of men versus men, is covered in depth by the media. I'm a journalist for the last 15 years, and I always like to say that the media is a reflection of our society that we live in. People like to talk about the media being biased and not objective, and there are a lot of negative things to say about the media. But the media holds up a mirror to our society in the Caribbean and shows us the good, the bad, and the absolute ugly of our societies. And when it comes to men, it is not a pretty picture all the time. And so what we have to embark on is breaking our silence on this male victimization that is happening across Latin America and the Caribbean. We really need to reinforce media stereotypes because it really distorts reality. The media as this great tool communicating to mass audiences can not only really look at men in a negative way, but shape the reality of men, predominantly as perpetrators of violence or the embodiments of toxic masculinity. Roughly 80% of homicides victims globally are male. Men are disproportionately victims of violence. Where I live in Trinidad and Tobago, around 75 to 76% of suicides, that's over 3/4 of the suicides, are by men. And there is this deep mental health crisis spreading like a cancer, or even worse than a cancer, in Latin America and the Caribbean, that we are oblivious to, that not enough people are studying and making people aware of it. We have people walking around, those monsters, and that's such a great front page that Larry pulled up. I love that because it really helps us to really look deep within ourselves and to look at the transition from that child on that front page to the prisoner in a jail cell. And what was that journey for that child to turn into that person? And so, here in Latin America and the Caribbean, we have this grave mental health crisis. But here's the thing. Not enough people understand or care that there is actually a mental health crisis, because everybody's walking around the city and the town as though nothing, as though the person next to them is okay. But that's not really true. A lot of us are walking around with a lot of burdens on our shoulder, a lot of baggage that turns us into these monsters that was depicted in the first presentation. And so, as much as we can and must do to ensure that when a man in Trinidad and Tobago, in Guyana, in Barbados, in Jamaica, go to the police station and report that they have been the subject of domestic abuse in their home, and they are taken seriously by the male police officer who does not laugh at them and say, "You're a man, go home and deal with it, suck it up." As much as we can and must do to ensure that justice is served for both men and women, on this International Day of raising awareness to eliminate violence against men and boys, we also need to look at the violence men are perpetrating against men. Because it's really how a lot of these men are ending up in prison cells. It's really how many of our men are ending up on the outside of the law. And it's ruining not just their lives, but it's ruining their children's lives. Because their daughter now does not have a male figure in the home. Or their son doesn't have a father in the home to teach them the things that they ought to be taught by their fathers. I'd like us to really now initiate, how can we, particularly in this block of the world, where so much violence is ripping and tearing us at the seams, how can we help men understand each other, listen to each other, learn to agree to disagree, to walk away from an argument, to not get into drugs, to be our brother's keeper, to support each other, to not compete with each other, to not fight each other and ultimately kill each other. That's what I hope for International Day of raising awareness against violence for men and boys. We have a lot of work to do to level the playing field with the gender divide, particularly as it relates to domestic disputes. But let's also now raise and amplify how we can level the playing field to help all men in our society. not feel like their neighbor is moving fast ahead of them and they need to steal from their neighbor, but how we can all raise ourselves as a society of men. Because too many men are on the run or ending up in our jail cells because they are fighting fellow men. And because too many of our young boys are growing up without fathers, they don't know how to become a well-respected gentleman. They're exposed to drugs at an early age. They are exposed to violence, and in tune, they practice that within their teenage years, and sometimes before 20, as in the case in Guyana, they are before the court, facing charges for bullying, for drugs, for raping. On this International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys, I would love, being from Latin America and the Caribbean, I would love to see a future in which Latin America and Caribbean men stop perpetrating violence against their fellow men. And I think if we can stop that, I think our women will stand a greater chance of living with a man who is non-violent and who can deal with an argument without getting physical, confrontational, or verbal. Rob, thank you very much for the time to do this. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ryan, for that passionate presentation. Larry DeMarco, Vincent Su, Dr. Bolu Alanaru, and Ryan Bichu, we're grateful to have had such a diverse and insightful panel with us today. Thank you for your time and contributions. I now turn it over to my co-host, Dipchand. You're on mute, Dipchand.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity to give my 2 cents on this, as well as continue with the format. I noticed there are no questions in the chat for now, so I'll give my personal thanks to the panel. That was some powerful stuff that we saw there and heard. So thank you to all 4 distinguished panelists. Their message, so eloquently and effectively delivered, covered a myriad of critical issues negatively impacting men and boys. And of course, focusing also on violence, which is obviously the topic today. Though we face an uphill battle through stigma, disbelief, apathy, and a lack of resources, to name a few, there are indeed some silver linings out there, and this is happening internationally. Governments, advocacy groups, for example, are battling hard to address some of these issues. Hopefully, we can get the media to more actively participate in this fight. So let's move on. I have a poem here which relates to media's participation in the fight against violence against men and boys. Shadows hide where men and boys reside. Unspoken pain is swelling tide. The media's voice a call to break the chains of silence for men's sake. Stories hidden behind the veil of strength and pride, a fragile tale. Let's bring to light the struggles real and give men room to feel and heal. The media's lens a window wide, reflecting truths we should not hide. Let aching hearts be seen and heard. Amplify male voices, heed that unheard word. Let the lens focus on what's to be won. In shared humanity, we stand as one. So I would now move on to read. We have some of the nominees coming up for awards for outstanding achievements in their lives and in their communities. So I have a list of names here, and I'm just going to run through some of their achievements and whatnot associated to them. I'm going to start off with Neil Gonzalez. He's an author, TEDx speaker, educator with 25 plus years in corporate leadership and education, championing belonging and dialogue. a certified moral courage mentor and heterodox academic Canadian member. He's an award-winning author and community leader, freelance writer, and co-founder of SG Productions, holding a Master's of Education in Leadership and Learning. Next, we have King Randall, who is a passionate youth mentor, educator, and community reform advocate from Albany, Georgia, whose impact on boys and young men is felt globally. His commitment goes beyond words, personally funding and traveling with his team from the United States to Nigeria, creating a life-changing experience for all boys, our team, and his extraordinary selflessness and unwavering dedication make him profoundly deserving of this award. We have Stephen Doris next. He has been a supporter and advocate as well for Voice of Men 360. He's a Safe Talk trainer and co-founder of the men's support group called Men Talk. He's also co-host of the Man to Man TV show and Big Brother. He has assisted young men in successfully transforming from depression and suicidal thoughts to safer ground. He's a past recipient of the Person of the Year for Cornwall, Ontario. Anthony Bolanero is a driven professional. He successfully runs a thriving logistics business while excelling in his full-time career. He leads men's fellowship prayer breakfasts, mentors young men on integrity and balance, and MCs community events. Claremont is a pastor, counselor, and international men's mentor who has guided boys, men, couples, and families for over 30 years across multiple countries. He has supported employment, housing, and mental health initiatives. In a remarkable act of In a remarkable act of selflessness, he's donated part of his liver to save a child, embodying faith-driven leadership and service. Stuart Thompson cooperates men peer support groups for CSA survivors at the Gatehouse, providing trauma-informed care. A survivor turned leader since 2011, he hosts the Personal Transformation Podcast, serves as co-chair for Survivors Council Canada, supports outreach and training and advocacy, and uses advocacy and storytelling to help survivors reclaim voice, belonging, and hope. DJ Dayton exemplifies what it means to lead with kindness, integrity, and service. He shows up fully, listens without judgment, validating each person's experience and modeling resilience and hope. DJ consistently goes above and beyond, and his compassion has directly changed lives. He embodies the spirit of International Men's Day through his commitment to uplifting others. Next, we have Dan Griffin. He advances understanding of men's trauma and its impact on addiction, helping men to confront shame, heal, and build authentic, lasting recovery. Through professional and volunteer work, he strengthens fathers, leaders, and citizens, bringing nuance and insight to mental health and recovery systems to better support men's growth and well-being. Augustine Jegasorthi, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. He's a respected community champion, fluent in 6 South Asian languages, connecting Tamil and broader communities in facilitators, speakers, and translator. With UN, Red Cross, and IRCC experience, he supports newcomers, men, and elders, promoting positive masculinity, healthy mindsets, and domestic violence awareness through programs like Men Like Me. Senator Godswill Akpabio, he's driven progress in Akwa Ibom State and nationally through infrastructure, education, and health initiatives. His leadership as Senate President prioritizes national stability and empowerment. Awards like Best Governor in Africa recognizes his impact. And finally, Dr. N. Ramamurthy is the director of MN Old Age Home and other intellectually disabled individuals' homes. He has founded a home for elders and has graciously donated 60% of his salary and his entire retirement funds for the maintenance and development of these institutes. Now, to all these people who has so obviously contributed in such a magnanimous way to their community, their fellow men, family, etc. We thank them for everything they've done and for all the voters who have nominated them as well. We thank them also. So I think, let me see here if there's any questions in the chat. There's a question from Larry. I would love to ask Ryan a question. Has he written about solutions? I applaud and acknowledge him for raising awareness of this topic, and we have few solutions on our website. I'm humbled to admit. Does he know of any resource and activities, and activists who are addressing this issue? Ryan. Are you there, Ryan?
Ryan is not here. His internet wasn't stable, so dropped out.
Oh,
He's trying to join back.
okay. Sorry about that, Larry. He's not available. So, the next stage is we would like the three of you panelists to go starting with Dr. Bolu to offer 2-minute final thoughts on today and the topic in general. Dr. Bolu.
Thank you so much for that, Dipchan.
Yeah.
Today was beautiful. It was great to listen to everyone's different perspectives, whether you were speaking about the media aspect, whether you were speaking about your personal experience, whether you were talking about the advocacy of men and boys. I thought it was very well put together from the different perspectives from different parts of the world. And I do believe that this is the conversation that needs to be had. I believe that this is the step towards the change of the narrative surrounding boys and men. And I do believe that with more discourse surrounding this topic, more activism being done, more books, more education, research, videos, media outlets, just to push this narrative forward of what it means to be a healthy, boy that turns into a great man. I think that those are conversations that need to be had, and continue to have these conversations will definitely make a difference with the next coming generation behind us. So I just want to thank everyone for their time today, everyone for coming out to share their different perspectives, their different analysis, their contributions towards not just themselves, but, towards men and boys as a whole. And I think this is a great step, and can't wait for next year to hopefully be back again to share more and to discuss more and to continue to push this positive initiative forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bolu. We certainly appreciate your contribution. Larry, you're next.
Sure. The first comment is in the chat, and you read that. Thank you. I had to misspell with activist. That was my fault, not yours.
That's okay.
It's on me.
Okay.
So I just want to bring up my last two slides, actually, that one solution that I have for the lack of awareness or media bias and problems with the media is one approach that I'm taking. When we as advocates alone put up a podcast or a presentation that goes an hour, the current, the younger generation, the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs are used to watching on their phones, watching streaming things on their phones, and they have attention span that lasts seconds.
Yeah.
So in the new podcast that we're launching, and this is an invitation to my fellow advocates that are on this panel and anyone watching, And for anyone who has a podcast, I want to propose to break down your podcasts into questions that are digestible in 1 minute bites, words of wisdom or gold nuggets to share about our message. Because then if you divide them and you post them on in the vertical format in under minute bite sizes, they have a chance to go viral and compete with those with the what our competitors, the young ones, the high schoolers, the who are posting puppies and dancing, and we can get our media competing with them. So that's the one thing that we do with a podcast. It's a new approach. It's not based on the interview. It's more to get your little knowledges and nuggets of wisdom to share widespread. And the second thing I wanted to add is that the We Are the Media campaign, Voices Men, I have to say, your content is fantastic. But unfortunately, it's a great kept secret. And part of it is because we're not supporting you, and we are, as advocates, to blame. You're doing so much hard, good work, but your story is same with ours. So what we are doing as part of what we do is to network people like you, doctors, experts, advocates, therapists, lawmakers, to help watch each other's content, share in forward as an organized group, because the media ignores us. So we can become a team and do this together. So I invite you to go to menandboys.net, put your name, address, and then shoot me an email, because we send messages almost like 4 days a week for different topics. So just hit reply, hey, give me more information about We Are the Media. I would like to participate because I have something to say and I want to help others with a similar message. We support each other. Thank you. I hope I didn't get too long. Thank you for that.
Now, thank you so much, Larry, and thanks for the invitation and acknowledging Voice of Men 360. We appreciate that. And finally, but not least of all, very important as the rest of the panel, is Vincent. Take it away, Vincent.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. And as a coach and therapy, I work with many students in the age of 13 to 17. Yeah. And it's very important for them to start young. I mean, to learn about self-control, emotional regulations. And that is the skills, the life skills that they need to learn. Yeah. And in fact, today I have been working with one of the young men, 20 years old, just completed his NS, National Service in Singapore, and he came to himself to want to seek help. And I find that it's very encouraging. And I told him that, wow, I mean, if more guys, I mean, coming to get help or to be aware of their strength, to be aware of their weaknesses, aware of their challenges, and just come. And he's been self-supported. His parents don't give him money to support him for therapy and coaching, but he paid for himself. I'm so glad on that. Yeah. And of course, working with adult men, yeah, even more challenging, because I mean, based on their belief systems, yeah, I mean, they have built the habits, yeah, and it's not easy. Yeah. And talking about that, right? I mean, since young, because I'm live in a family of violence, yeah, and anger is my most frequent emotions that I experience. Yeah. And when I got married at the age of 23, I'm currently, I mean, I'm going to celebrate with my wife on my 30 years anniversary this December. Yeah. Yeah. And beginning of the years, I mean, first few years, we quarrel, we kind of shooting each other down. Yeah. And that's where, and because of my anger, yeah. And just really, I will not control myself. I will just shoot it up. And then after that, I regretted. Yeah. And of course, I mean, being real. Yeah. And I've been authentic. Yeah. And I learned. Yeah. And I thank my wife for giving me the space. Yeah. To learn and grow as a man. Yeah. And now I'm a mature man. I would like to mentor the young people. Yeah. In my society and in my community. And yes, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Vincent, for that personal and powerful message. I know it must have taken a lot of courage for you to do so, and I definitely commend you for that. So thank you all again to all the panelists. And before we move on to the closing, I just have some announcements regarding our organization, Voice of Men 360. We encourage pretty much everyone out there to participate, engage with us in one form or the other. I'm going to share out some contact information here. Our phone number is 226-289-8784. Our email address is info@voiceofmen360.org. Our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. We are pretty much on all the popular social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. We have a Facebook group page. We encourage you and your friends to join, see what our daily activities is, and participate as best you can. We certainly appreciate that. As well, we have a YouTube channel, and again, it's called Voice of Men 360. We encourage you, encourage your friends, get on board and look at our videos. We have some powerful, insightful messages throughout. We have hundreds and hundreds of videos, so please engage as much as you can. We would appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, media shapes our understanding of men and boys. Let's recognize its impact and promote positive change. Our panel highlighted the need for diverse, authentic portrayals to reduce stigma and promote healthy masculinity. Men and boys are often victims of violence and pain, often in silence. Let's challenge ourselves to be part of the solution. Support media professionals telling stories of male vulnerability, strength, and resilience. Amplify underrepresented voices and create a culture valuing empathy, compassion, and equality. Share your thoughts using the hashtag #ChangeTheNarrative. Our sincere appreciation to everyone involved in this broadcast today. First off, the audience, we really appreciate your time. To our esteemed panel, Lawrence DeMarco, Vincent Su, Dr. Bolu Olanaru, and Ryan Bechu for their invaluable input. We really appreciate your time and your contribution. To Sivam Velautam, our president, who is behind the controls and has done a fantastic job making it as seamless as possible. And the guy doesn't stop. He's like the ever-ready bunny. He just keeps going and going. And my co-host, Rob Hurholtz, for his outstanding effort today. Well done, Rob. Thank you so much. Let's shape a brighter future for men, boys, and our communities. Remember, media has the power to shape narratives. Let's use it to uplift and empower. So from all of us here at Voice of Men 360, we thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a Voice of Men 360 production. Thanks again, and have yourself a wonderful day. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.